home games. That is Rick Zamperin from 900 CHML Radio, Bubba O'Neill from CHCH TV Sports, Steve Milton, sports columnist with the Hamilton Spectator. I am Scott Radley of the Hamilton Spectator and 900 CHML. And guys, we have a lot to talk about today because first thing this morning or thereabouts, I was sitting at my desk and suddenly this email pops up with a press release announcing CFL to explore opportunities for alignment with XFL. And Rick, I had to read this 2 or 3 times because I thought maybe it was early for an April Fool's joke or something. We don't really know what this is yet, but what did you think when you saw that the CFL and XFL are apparently doing something together?
Well, I was surprised, number one, because I didn't expect that to come out, especially today. I know that, the CFL and Commissioner Randy Ambrosie with the CFL 2.0 has been thinking globally, but has done so outside of the USA, looking towards Mexico and Europe. But at the same time, I think the line item that got me was that the XFL is now pressing pause on its 2022 launch. So to me, I think that's a huge item because that means that there's something brewing, and that something obviously includes the Canadian Football League. And the big question is what that looks like. We don't know. We can speculate that there's a merger or there's going to be 2 leagues that will play some sort of championship matchup at the end of their seasons. Who knows what that season looks like? Do they play at the same time? There's so many question marks and so many intriguing things that we're going to dive into here.
Bubs, what do you think? What did you think when you heard that?
Well, of course, I fell off my chair, which was a problem. It blew me away. I mean, we're sitting here waiting pretty much for when the CFL will announce its return, even though Randy Ambrosie has been very public up to about 2 weeks ago saying we're going to play and we're going to play a full season. We're just waiting on the actual way that's going to look. So when you take me in a totally different direction, that this league is now aligning with an American Football League, one that has failed twice, I'm blown away. I'm wondering, and of course, I think what everyone's doing right now is wondering how this will affect the Canadian game as we know it. And I think that is what has most CFL fans concerned. There are younger fans that are saying, this is probably good for the CFL because it needs change. There are old timers like myself that are thinking, we can't lose the heritage of its league, the rules, the Canadian content. So I'm up in arms right now, and I'm wondering if the Randy Ambrosie letting us know, because they said they wanted to be transparent. Is it good for it? Because there's so many questions that are unanswered. So I don't even know if I want to know this.
Steve?
Well, I agree with the previous 2 guys. There are questions unanswered, and that's the first thing that jumped out at me too, Rick, was well, not the first thing, but it was a bit shocking. More so shocking because every day I talk to 2 or 3 people inside the CFL, and it hadn't yet today, but certainly earlier in the week, and none of it came up. And actually, you know why it didn't come up? They didn't know. A lot of the people didn't know. There's been a lot of protection here. So I think what there's, besides a transparency thing here, and certainly this is how we phrase it in The Spectator, this is a case of them jumping out in front of their own stories and taking control of the narrative before it takes control of them. And everybody inside the CFL explained, look, when you've got the kinds of people you're talking to and you're even make a phone call to them, it's going to get out. I mean,
yeah, and Steve, I think you're right, but I want to add something to that. I don't think, even if you want to get out in front of it, and I don't disagree with that idea.
I'm not saying that's all it is, Scott. I'm saying that now. Yeah.
But you don't put out a press release like this, and the XFL as well doesn't put it out unless you're well into the process. This is not, Randy Ambrosie made a comment to the Sun newspapers, and he goes, this is just an exploration. We're just going to walk down the path and see there is no way this is point 1 of this exercise. You are well into this before.
I think it's early. I actually do think it's early, but it's not point 1. There's other stuff here.
Well, the commissioner even said that they've been having discussions with XFL officials. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Danny Garcia being the 2 primary, Jeffrey Pollock, the CEO and president of the league. They've been having those discussions for a while. What they've been discussing again, remains a mystery. Does it mean a merger? Does it mean player sharing? Does it mean, seasons that are going to coexist? Does it mean one league? One thing that I've been thinking about over the last several hours is, does this mean that the XFL is going to play a 3-down game instead of the CFL playing a 4-down game? We know that the NFL dominates 4 down. There's no more AFL. There's no more USFL. There's no other league that's going to play 4 downs that's going to challenge the NFL. So I think if the XFL was smart, I think they'd adopt the CFL rules. I think as a CFL fan, we don't want those rules to go away anytime soon or anytime. And I think that would be a major sticking point if the XFL said, all right, CFL, you can join the club, but we're going to have to play 4 downs, American rules, all that kind of stuff. That's where I put a upside.
But I think we've already seen this. And I know we're going back to like 95, 96, 97, 98, somewhere around there. I think the better part of 3 seasons where the Canadian Football League and it's in its own desperate straits, maybe as we are right now, because let's be honest, the league are definitely financially strapped. They're hurting right now with the pandemic. It's not the league's fault, but there are other things that are affecting this league where they need an influx of cash. So we've seen this league in Memphis and Sacramento and Shreveport, in Baltimore. And really, the only reason why it worked in Baltimore is because the Colts moved to Indianapolis or Cleveland. So I'm confused about how people in the United States, if this is the road they're going down, will receive the Canadian game on a massive sort of growth prospect.
I think we're way ahead of ourselves here on that, and I think Randy's right about that as to whether that's what it's going to be. What I see here, and this is one of the things I see here, and this is the stuff that's crept up on me during the day, is at this point it looks like the XFL needs a CFL more than vice versa.
Yes,
I think so too.
And that's what it feels like. This is similar to investigating a lot of things. They'd be silly not to listen to all of this, but we're jumping right ahead to say, I can't imagine they don't end up playing some games against each other. Mm-hmm. And what the XFL will try to sell is the value of a spring season. But you've got to watch what I would call creeping hedge mowing. And Radley and I talked about this earlier today on the phone, and that you've got to, eventually you could end up without even noticing it, surrendering bit by bit by bit. But that's what we're here for, guys.
But see, Steve,
we're here for to make sure.
I'm not sure that I agree that the XFL needs the CFL more. And I saw some nodding heads, and that's fine. But look, 2012, the CFL averaged 28,190 fans. 8 consecutive seasons, attendance has gone down. They're now down more than 5,000 fans a game. Every year, it's dropped. The CFL, for whatever reason, has not been able to stem the tide. And I think they're looking at this thinking, we need the XFL. We need, whether it's The Rock and his marketing or The Rock and his money.
They need the marketing. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
The CFL is not in a healthy position, at least not on the trajectory it is.
I think the other guys right now need it more. They're still trying to decide how to handle the bankruptcy. He's paying 15 cents on the dollar, but it's not executed yet.
Yeah.
It's not executed. And don't forget, they just got into it, the XFL too, right? I mean, we say they've been talking for a long time. When did they buy them out of bankruptcy? Late August?
A year, yeah, not even a year.
Last summer.
But when you talk about the marketing guys, I mean, and that the CFL may need The Rock and all the things that he offers, how long does that last? Right? Like, there's no doubt that there'd be some excitement, some buzz. Hey, Dwayne The Rock Johnson's in Canada. He's stopping into to Toronto, to Hamilton. There's no doubt there'll be a buzz. There'll be excitement. But there'll be,
we had Ric Flair try that already.
That's not the main thing about The Rock and that group. That's not it. It's what they are already doing to market other properties and what they're in. Yes, they use themselves to start with, but geez, how long has it been since The Rock wrestled? He's acting now, but he'll be acting the rest of his life. But that's not what they sell only. That's some of the cachet. What they have, the two of them have this incredible marketing thing. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's the demographics that they're after. You're 100% right, Scott, that they've got to get a better market, but you just got to look at all this stuff. They'd be insane not to kick the tires on this. But again, this is what we're here for.
How do those people know what sells in Saskatchewan? How do those people know what's good in Vancouver? There are individual markets across this country. I mean, we're not talking about a football fury country like the United States where, you know what, you show a high school game. I've been to a high school game in Dallas, Texas with 25,000 people. It's a different mentality in the United States than Canada when it comes to football on the general, but especially when it is the CFL. I just don't see
two words. They're pros.
They're pros. Individual market.
Rick, jump in.
I think the XFL wants the CFL's legacy standpoint. You know, the CFL's been doing this for, you know, well over 100 years, obviously, with the Grey Cup being, what are we at, 107, 108. So there's been some success north of the border. I think what the CFL wants out of the XFL is, that marketing kind of landscape, that intrusion into U.S. markets. If there's going to be teams, you know, based in the United States, they have to be based in cities that have some Canadian content. So whether that's Orlando, Hartford / Boston, you know, upstate New York, Minneapolis, the Minnesota area, Portland or Seattle, they have to focus on, you know, cities that are going to make sense in terms of a fan base where you have a lot of Canadians already there, and maybe they're already accustomed to watching some CFL football.
Let me throw a couple other cities at you, Rick. Mexico City, Munich,
yes, Berlin,
Rome.
Okay, let me.
And who already has those? Who already has them? Who owns them now? In terms
NFL
of
Europe.
Not really.
Well, not Mexico City. They're clearly not in Europe. I understand that part.
Well, even NFL Europe only. There's not really an NFL. Who owns them in terms of the leagues that are there, and who's basically the senior organizing group of that right now? Who is it?
Are you going to suggest CFL 2.0?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let
I'm
me
not
ask you a
saying it's a
question.
success. What I'm saying is it's a leg. It's a leg up on where they want to go.
Let me ask. I want everyone to answer this question, and Rick, I'll go to you again first on this one. Let us, just for the sake of argument, we don't know what this means yet. For the sake of argument, let's say they are talking about some kind of merger. All right, just for the sake. And again, we don't know this, but just because that's one of the things being thrown around. If you do a merger, Rick, and the CFL has to give up many of its rules because Americans don't, for whatever reason, the perception is Americans don't want to watch 3-down football. Have you saved the patient by killing the patient?
Good point.
I mean, sometimes you got to lop off a digit to, you know, maintain your life, right? You know, I'd hate to see a lot of the rules go. I think there's certain rules that have to stay. And for me, you know, 3 downs is the hill that I would die on if I'm the Canadian Football League. There's no way I go to a 4th down. That completely changes the game, you know, and 12 guys. You know, I would not change that either. If they want to make the field smaller and use NFL stadiums, okay, I'll relax that. But I'd rather have
to in some places because of the size of the stadium.
Only on lengthwise, not on width.
Unless you can MLS stadiums.
Yeah, Bubba, what do you think? Is that the idea of the rules, if you had to give some up?
No, I can't see that. I think that's what makes this game so great. The CFL game is its individuality compared to leagues in the South, right? And to me, to change that, you're selling your soul to the devil, right? Like, I'm sorry, none of these things should be changed, right?
Well, I think you got to draw X number of lines in the sand, and I would say the biggest battle is going to be 3 downs and 4s, Bob.
With that said, I have heard people on ESPN constantly call the CFL a gadget league. And believe me, I know there's a lot of American football fans that think that. And yes, there's a small percentage of people that know about the CFL that probably watch it on ESPN 2 and 3, but it's just not enough for me. I just can't see the sense of it. Does the CFL need help? Yes. Do they need some marketing direction and teaching? Yes. You know what? I do agree with this. In any league, you have to move forward. You need advancement. You need change. And it's real hard to accept change. But changing the game as the root of how it is presented and how it's been for 105 or 7 years, to me, again, is a major, major gamble.
Well, wait a minute. This is a straw dog argument. We're setting up something that doesn't exist and skewering it. We don't know that exists yet.
Steve, we said if this was a merger, we don't know yet. We set that out clearly at the beginning. But if it is, would you be willing to give up some of the rules?
Yeah. I mean, if it's a merger, it's going to be difficult to play all the way from spring until November, right? That's one thing we didn't talk about here is what you have to do.
Yeah.
the scheduling. Because
Yeah.
even when the USFL had billionaire owners, they were smart enough not to run their schedule up against the NFL because they knew
Until
that
they
wouldn't
weren't.
work.
Until they weren't.
Well, but they did their schedule beforehand. So you would have to decide when you're going to play this league. Now, something that was said to me today, one thing I will say that was kind of intriguing was, well, look at the weather outside now. You could theoretically start in April and have your Grey Cup on Labor Day weekend, which, you know what? That would not be the stupidest and worst thing in the world. But that may be the only positive thing rules-wise or something that you could change that people would be maybe okay with.
And that's something I would be okay with. Starting the season earlier, maybe playing a fewer games. Maybe it's a 14-game season or even a 16-game season. You get the playoffs in. Maybe you play the Grey Cup in October instead of November. You eliminate a lot of those minus 30 possibilities in Regina or whatever the host city is. But I can also see this. 9 teams in the north of the border, 5 teams in the U.S., and as Steve mentioned, a team in Mexico, 3 more in Europe. You have an 18-team league, and maybe come the final, you have the best team in Canada. And the best team in the US/world, you play a 2-game total point series. Game number 1 is CFL rules. Game number 2 is 4-down rules.
I talked to a guy in the CF in the that just died XFL, not in the new administration. 2 guys about that very thing today, and I think it's that World Series type of idea. Maybe they don't play each other much of the time, but they do.
Let me ask you one more
like
thing.
Like soccer, who says you can't reconvene, right?
Yeah, but Steve, you don't have completely different rules in 2 soccer games. One of them doesn't allow you to use your hands.
I'm just talking about sort of getting together for a tournament thing.
That's fine if you could have standardized rules but that's going to be the big issue if this ever happens is finding rules.
Is it going to be a
gimmick? I want to ask you all about again, and that is this. One of the things also that became an issue when when the CFL expanded to the States before was the ratio thing, because the American laws didn't allow for that. I don't know that happens again, because we saw Baltimore come in and win the championship because they were able to play all American players. Does this essentially not end, but make it so much more difficult for Canadian players to participate in the CFL a second time around?
I think the ratio gets lowered big time. If you're adding, let's say you're adding 5 teams, max. In the U.S. as a part of this new XFL, CFL, get together, there's no way you can have 7 Canadian stars. I mean, you could, but the quality of the player is going to be watered down once you get to team, number 13 and 14 on the list.
No.
Having 21 Canadians mandated per team, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough.
Guys, impossible. You are not. Let's just, for example, because we know the man very well, we all 4 of us. You are not convincing June Jones, if he is still the head coach in Houston, that he has to play and adopt to the Canadian quota in terms of Canadian players in Houston. It's not going to. There's no way.
Well, it's against their law. Then it's not going to happen because it's against their law.
It's not going to happen. There's no way. There's the fans won't go for it in any of those American markets. They want to. Where's Thunder Bay? Where is Kenora? Where is Vancouver? There's no way these people wherever these American cities are going to be that you can sell me that's a possibility.
And even if you were to say, Bubba, okay, you don't have to have Canadians, but whatever country you're in, you must have the ratio with your countrymen. Well, now you put a team in Mexico City, they're going to get destroyed by every American team because they don't have the history and the depth of players that you would have in any American team.
There's if you adopt the way the CFL does it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, but look at all the quote unquote what I call paper Canadians. The Ticats have had all kinds of them, Jones and the Unger now, all of those kinds of players. There's way more of those who are Mexican actually than there are Canadians for those. So, but I get your point in general. I think that's the case. But I think this is going to be. Is it a gimmick league? Somebody mentioned that. Bubba, was it you? But so was the XFL. That's what they sell as gimmicks. And the NFL took a lot of the gimmicks, and a lot of the XFL was taken from Canada, and both times.
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt there, but when it's used by ESPN commentators that I've heard, we heard Boomer Esiason when Chris Streveler had to start with Arizona. When I say that word gadget, or like it's used in a negative term. It gets used negatively against the CFL.
I would like his opinion about how esports are, because they're gadgets too.
Sure. And hey, let's look at
the
NFL
world in about a week.
Yeah, let's look at the NFL transition from a run-heavy game to a pass-heavy game. It is more CFL-like than ever before. So you can call the NFL a gadget league now too.
They'll never say that though. They'll say that's the evolvement of the NFL game. Right. They will never say that's because we have Canadian coaches or Canadian coaches that understand the CFL. They'll never sell that or tell that to the American fans.
Yeah. There would be absolutely a sales job required of biblical proportions to convince Americans that if the XFL were to go to 3-down football, that this is an evolution that's better for football. Now, we can believe that, having seen it, but if you're living in the southern states or somewhere and never seen the CFL, it would look like a gadget gimmick league. It would. You would have to sell that in a majestic way.
But when back in the day, and that's quite a while ago now, I played in a 4-down. I played in a 4-down league, and it was the kind of farm system of the CFL at that time. You know, that didn't involve me. I was the worst player in the league, but lots of guys came out of that, and I actually came to like it in a lot of ways, as long as the timing issues are okay. Like as long as you still have the 20-second clock or the 15 and all of those kinds of things. There's going to be some things. I mean, the game's changing, the way entertainment's changing. You can't, the NFL can sell it for what it is because of its institutional, but anybody else that's trying anything, except the CFL in Canada, where it's just as established and more so than the NFL is in the United States in terms of history. Anything else is new and has to have a look that none of us are going to really find totally palatable.
Yeah. Beyond the marketing too, sorry, Scott, just to interrupt. Beyond the marketing, I think this league's, whatever they're going to call it, the success of it is going to be predicated by how heavily and accepted it is in Las Vegas. Because as we know, the NFL rules Vegas. And if the CFL and XFL, whatever that's going to be, can get in there and get people betting and thinking and having that fantasy football element to it, that's going to be a huge key.
Yeah, and if you see the XFL, it suddenly looks like a Super Bowl title.
That's right. That's right. but that's what the XL. That's what the both XFL guys I talked to today. These are again not for the current administration, from before, said exactly the same thing. First thing, betting immediately.
But you can do that now.
You can, but get on it and really move on it.
The games are available now for betting right now, as it is in the CFL. And
I'm talking about in stadium and all of those kinds of things. Like a
right. You're right. But I believe the CFL can do that on their own without the XFL.
Well,
one last thing for me, guys, is that again going back to the rule changes and possibly tinkering with the game. If that's the case, and I will say this, when I played high school ball, it was a 4-down game, but they changed the high school game back to 3-down game to 3-down to suit at the time CIS, CIAU, and now U Sports. Obviously, they changed that. I will say this: if you tinker with the ratio, you tinker with too many of these rules, it will be the death. It will be the death of U Sports football as we know it and Canadian junior football. It will never be the same.
I couldn't agree more.
As we've said right off the top, we don't really know what the announcement this week means. It is very wide as far as what the interpretations could be. The league has not really given any kind of direction, but you know what? These are some of the things that people are talking about, and we would love to hear from you. You've heard the discussions here and elsewhere. You've heard people talking about it. You've probably talked about it with your friends and your other football fan buddies and your whomever else. You've probably given some thought to this by now. What do you think it is that the league is talking about? What do you think about the idea of the CFL and XFL aligning in some way, whether that's merely marketing or a merger or championship games with interdivisions or whatever else? We would love to hear from you. Comment down below, subscribe down below so you get these videos when they come out. Hit the notification bell so you're reminded of it. We appreciate you watching. We're going to talk to you again soon.